Are you constantly feeling the pressure of tight deadlines, with your team perhaps stretched to the limit and stress levels through the roof? Well, it's a common struggle. Crunch times in businesses like tax season or launch dates or release schedules or events can push your team to the brink, leading to burnout, mistakes, and a business that just feels like it's always on the edge. So how do you break this cycle and create a thriving, stress-free work environment in those circumstances? Well, today we have the privilege of speaking with Graeme Tennick, a true game changer in the world of accountancy and business strategy. And Graeme isn't just managing the stress in his business, he's mastering it. He's built Tennick Accountants into a powerhouse by transforming how they manage crunch times, particularly in those peak periods around tax deadlines, and turning it instead into peak performance whilst keeping his team energized and engaged. And so his approach has not only led to happier teams, but also skyrocketed client satisfaction and his business growth. So in this episode, we're going to dive into Graeme's game-changing strategies for reducing team stress, retaining top talent, and improving client relationships. And so if you've ever felt overwhelmed by the stress in your business relating to crunch times and deadlines, then you don't want to miss this. Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual, and I'm joined today by Graeme Tennick. Welcome to the podcast, Graeme.
Thank you so much for having me, Alexis. And I'm so pleased those multiple beers I bought you in Nashville have paid off with all those kind words you said. It was an expensive investment on my behalf, but it was worthwhile.
Good. No, it absolutely was. And I'm glad that we didn't have a few before the interview. Otherwise, like those times in Nashville, would have knocked some of the work on the head and opted instead to head and watch the bands. For context, for those that may not know, I was in Nashville a few weeks ago for US, Zero being the accounting solution. And I was fortunate enough to be spending a lot of time with Graeme and some other friends of ours. And we had an absolutely fantastic time and did do work and learn lots of things. But wow, the stories we could tell about Nashville, and highly recommend it. We do. But one of the stories that you told me, Graeme, when we were there was about how your journey in business started really with you learning about your dad's forklift business and those kind of experiences that you had of how he did business and how you worked with clients and all these sorts of things. How did those early experiences shape your approach to business, particularly relating to kind of managing the stress and your approach of like how business is done today?
Yeah, I think it's a great one, really, because I think when you have a look generations-wise, you start to see some of the fundamental changes which have actually taken place across multiple generations. So when I go back to my dad, it was actually his birthday yesterday. So happy birthday, Dad, again. I did wish him happy birthday yesterday, just to be clear. I took him out for breakfast, Dad.
Yeah, I'm
sure he is. But with my dad running a forklift truck business, a lot of the time with regards to things there, it was something whereby you just process things internally. And it was very much a case of the stress, the struggle, and everything which went with it was just a natural given. At that point there, bedtimes and meal times would be missed. My dad did love the journey, so my dad was fortunate enough to really love what he did. There's a lot of things missed, and a lot of stress, a lot of struggle, which I never really seen from the outside looking in, if I'm honest. And it was only when I grew up I started recognizing more things. But to see the journey, I mean, I speak quite freely of the fact that the best present I never received as a child was a £5 A-team gun. And it kind of taught me a lot, the fact that my dad was growing the business at the time. He did manage to exit it when he wanted, how he wanted, with what he wanted. I've seen the stress and the struggle firsthand, but only as I grew older, I started kind of realising a lot of the bits which I didn't see, and a lot of things he told me about. But I was fascinated by it, that whole idea of not living for a Friday and dreading a Monday, not being in a job where you weren't engaging with people. My dad would always give advice, help, support outside of forklifts. He would chat to absolutely anybody. He would chat to the cleaner like you were the managing director. He would chat to a stranger on the street like what he would to his best friend. He was always polite, professional, wanting to make the world a better place with everybody he interacted with. And I was like, I want to do that. But when you're going through the career path at school and you say, I want to be a business owner. Well, actually, let's rewind a step. I want to be a footballer. That was my first thing. So I did ask that first. I did send multiple letters to football clubs. Never quite went according to plan. So next, I want to be a business owner. Well, what do you want to do? Great question. Haven't got a clue. And that's when I kind of thought, well, let's do accountancy, and then let's try and find the same passion which my dad found to make the same impact he made. But yeah, I'd seen the sacrifices made. I'd seen the positive journey he'd been on and what he got the other side. I was like, I want to do the same as that. And that's where it really started. Like I say, I've seen the sacrifices made along the way, and it really instilled a huge passion within me, because not everybody's as fortunate as my dad was. My dad could have lost it all at any point in time. And I see there now, I think from an accountant's perspective, we're in a very privileged position to give people more experiences similar to what my dad had, but better. I want people to have more meal times and bedtimes with children. I want people to enjoy the journey rather than fixating on the destination. I want people to feel comfortable that if they were to die tomorrow, they've left a life that was fulfilled and left behind positive memories for loved ones.
I love that, and I think that's something that we share a great affinity on. I've talked in the podcast before about the core values that I have across my businesses, and one of them is literally called "enjoy the journey," which is the phrase you just used there. And so I think that's something that I think likely in part because we've both had a similar upbringing where we both had one or more parents who were running a business and doing great things, but very focused on that and experiencing the stress of that. And I think we've then looked at that and said, okay, there's lots I like about building the business, but I want to be there for the kids. I want to be available. I want to enjoy the journey and not wait for that. Oh, well, one day, if I can just get to this next milestone, then maybe then it'll be better, which of course the reality is it doesn't work that way. But I think what's interesting to me, therefore, and big reason for this discussion is for you, I've seen how you've embedded that in all sorts of ways in which you run your business. You've received many awards, and your business has received many awards for how innovative it's been and some of the best practices that you've applied, which is really great to see. But one of those that's perhaps the most tricky to de-stress is around deadlines, and particularly. I've been fortunate to work with a lot of accountancy practices recently, and one of the things I see is that classic crunch. And for people that are less familiar with it, bear in mind that most businesses have got a shared financial year that matches the sort of UK or the country financial year, and so there's a lot of businesses that all have this similar kind of crunch time around getting their taxes done. Now, in theory, of course, you've got many months to get it done. Like for your tax year, so in the UK, a lot of businesses' tax years will finish 31st of March, which means you've got April, May, June, July, August, September, etc., all the way up until end of December to get it done. And actually, in terms of workload, I was talking to accountancy practice just today. Like we're talking days to get the accounts done. It's not weeks, months, years to get an accounts done. It's days of work to get the accounts done and so on. And yet, I, as a business owner, have been in the situation many years ago, not now, but I've been in the situation of running to the post box to get these signed off accounts in so that they can get back to the accountant, so that they can submit it to Companies House and all this sort of things so that I don't get fines. And it shouldn't be that way. And yet I know so many businesses, but then accountancy practices are working in that way, and that creates huge stress in all the people involved. Perhaps can you walk us through a time when your team was really under pressure and the problems that they were facing before we kind of then move on to what did you then do about it? How did you alleviate it?
Yeah, so and a lot of this comes back to psychology, because I think, and again, I'll talk about the what in a second, but that why, which we talk about from a family business background, can really filters through into things, and it often gets lost or kind of pushed down the list in terms of priorities. So probably the biggest example, and again, we'll go through a similar one there now with new change we've got coming up, but I'll leave that till later on if I have time to cover it. But I would go back to January 2021. January 2021, obviously, again, it was in the thick of COVID. We were like many more accountants out there in terms of January was the deadline. We had 115 tax returns to do by the end of January. And again, I'm not going to give any excuses or anything like that. That's exactly where we were. 115 tax returns. I had 2 phone calls in the space of 10 minutes. The first phone call I had was from a staff member just to say, look, I won't be able to work as normal that day because my mum's got COVID. It's like, not a problem, that's fine. Within a few minutes of that first phone call, I got a phone call saying that one of our key members of the team, his dad had committed suicide. And it was one of these things where it just kind of hits you. And nothing to do with the debt at this point, but it was just a case of, like, what the heck? The first thing you think of, and like what I'd like to think most people think this right, whatever that individual needs, given what's happened family wise, we're here. Take as much time as they want away from the business, do what needs to be done, we're here. Whatever they need, we're here. That's the first and foremost priority. They said, not a problem, really appreciate it. Because again, I was speaking to the other half, I wasn't speaking to them. And then got off the call, and then it was a case of I then think, right, I need to bring things together here. So I got the senior team together and said, right, guys, this is the situation. We need to come together because we need to support outside the firm because it's one of our core values in terms of this individual and the challenges they're going through. But we also need to remain professional inside the firm because we still have a job which we need to do the best of our abilities. Now, it really galvanised us as a team, and we got through that January. Ironically, a week before the end of the deadline, HMRC gave every accounts firm another month, which wound us up, but I said, no, we'll stick to the same deadline. But it really kind of hit home. And it's horrible to say, but sometimes people have got to go through the pain of something to really get them to step over the line. And that was the moment where it was just a case of, why are we doing what so many others do rather than doing what matters most to us? And there was a number of barriers among all of that side of things. And again, I'll come to that in a moment. But that was a huge monumental moment where we really galvanised as a team to lead into multiple actions thereafter, which, like I say, I'll share in a moment or two's time.
Yeah, that's. Thank you for sharing that. And I've had situations in my own businesses where, as you say, a team member hits one of those kind of things, and it's just it can send a shockwave through the business, because you have that moment of, everyone's been heads down, oh my god, I've got so many emails or whatever, and then when something big happens like that, you just kind of, it gives you perspective, and you just go, oh whoa, okay, that's the stuff that really matters. And so, credit to you for, in that moment, having that ability to go, okay, what really matters here? Look after the person, then get my senior team together and work out, how do we make this work for the rest of the team? Because I think it would have been easy to just go, okay, well, guys, we're a team member down, or in fact, two more team members down because we've got another team member who's sick. We're just going to have to work harder and work longer. And I think that, you are always fantastic at stepping out and being more strategic in that way. What, going forwards, because obviously that was very specific in terms of at that time, and like, how were you going to just get, because by then it's too late, right? Like, you're already at the deadline basically, or close to the deadline. And so that was then about a management exercise of making all of the parts work and supporting the team and so on, which you're fantastic at. Going forward, I know that your attitude was, okay, but I don't want us to even be close to that situation. I want to be proactive so that actually we're not feeling like we're working to this crazy deadline. Instead, this is something that we manage better just as normal business as usual. So what were the steps that you took to kind of put that in place?
Well, you know me very, very well insofar as I'm a very detailed and specific person, but I can also be a very strategic person. So I did two things off the back of this. The first thing I did was, this isn't happening again insofar as things, because the bottom line was, regardless of what had happened at the very start of January, when we switched off over the Christmas, we were going into January with that number of tax returns. So it wasn't circumstances which had put us in a position whereby we had this challenge. It was us. So that ownership and that responsibility sat with us. So I first said, right, okay, let's not look at the barriers which is stopping us from making the change. Let's have a look and consider the barriers which are going to force us to make the change. So the first thing I did was I said, oh, right, I'm going to go ski in January next year, and I'm going to go the last week in January, so I'm not even going to be here. So straight, nice. And I had a conversation with a client yesterday, because they said, I want to have August off next year. Inform all my clients, I'm not going to be able to support them then. And I said, right, okay, well, let's understand the financial impact and send the email all those clients as soon as possible, and certainly by the end of this month, and say I won't be in. And I said, then you're committed. The commitment's made. You know what the commitment is. It's just done. So that was the first very specific example. I said, I'm not here then. So there's no way I'm going to be discussing things. I then segmented the goal down a little bit, because, like I say, we are at that time we were a team of 15, we're now a team of 10, and I'll explain a little bit more around the team in a minute. But then I segmented. I said, right, okay, that alone isn't really enough. I want to understand how much we can push the boundaries in terms of getting things done. So I chatted with the team, because this isn't about my goals, this is about the team getting involved. And I said, right, okay, can we get all tax returns done by the end of November? The team said no. And I said, well, let's do it by December. And we agreed on that. We then put multiple steps before then and can say, what do we need to do to get that? So again, the first thing you do, and typically what I've found, and this comes back to the psychology piece, you often go for the low-hanging fruit with regards to things. You're like, okay, we'll do those bits there, so it feels like a quick win. That can work, but I actually went the opposite way. I was like, right, let's have a look at those clients where they're always last minute. Can we flip them, or do we just need to move them on? Because maybe those are the ones that need a bit more attention earlier, and they can be flipped. If they can't be flipped, let's just move them on, because we're going to fail. We're going to fail them. We're going to fail us. So let's just get ahead of that conversation now. We're in February. So let's just tackle those ones straight away there. Then let's go back up from there. So again, the next latest ones, and we just went through and strategically planned month upon month where all those clients are going to fit. We'll communicate to the clients what the commitment was. We even agreed as a team what the impact was going to be as a result of doing it. So we communicate to the client, by way of doing this, we take the stress and struggle away over Christmas. You can see the benefits of doing this. And we agreed the reward. The reward was twofold. One was committing to a charity called Feeding Families who struggle over Christmas. And the other one was Cash for Kids. So again, contributing to give kids gifts over Christmas. So then hopefully no child wakes up on Christmas Day without a gift. But I said 90%, and we agreed this as a team, 90% gets done by November, make a contribution with regards to Feeding Families. 100% gets done by Christmas, contributing Cash for Kids. Missed the target, we don't contribute. So again, we had meaning and methodology with everything, which everyone was on board with. And that alone galvanised everything we did, and we did hit our targets with regards to it. But it did lead to a bigger piece, and I'll try to summarise this bit, otherwise I could chat for ages about this. It chatted a bigger piece about something we started to do before this, and this was an exercise called Myers-Briggs. A lot of people would have heard of DISC, but it's about personality traits and psychology. We started having a look on a broader approach. Say, look, is this firm operating in the right way? Have we got the right people in here? Have we got the right people on the bus? Is it square peg, round holes? So we managed 5 of our 15 team members out of the business. We didn't make anybody redundant. In the words of Disney, we helped them find happiness elsewhere. But we just managed them out and say, look, we're no longer on the same path of where we want to go, how we want to work, the difference we want to make. There's maybe another firm out there which is a better fit for you, and we signpost them, assist them with it. Everything was okay, managed. We did the same thing with clients. And again, we just managed those out. So then all of a sudden, we made a commitment the following year. This was in 2022 of what our vision was going to be, our vision, our values. So we built everything out from the top down and from the bottom up in terms of what our vision was going to be. We told everybody what we're looking to do, why we're looking to do it, and we'd love to have them on board. But it started from within and built out. And that alone gave us the infrastructure to set targets we all agreed on, to agree underlying plans which supported those targets, and massively flipped absolutely everything around. And I'm a big believer, you've heard me say this a few times when we were away, you win or you learn. You only lose when you don't take the lessons and experiences you've had. And I completely push that ethos as we continue to strive to be the best version of ourselves. So we don't compare ourselves with our firms. And that's not arrogance. That's just because, there's other firms out there that's better than us. They'll always be better than us. But I just want to be the best version of me, and I want to give the team the platform to do the same. Same with clients, but we're very focused, very strategically led. And that was what allowed us to turn the corner at that point in time.
Yeah, really nice. There's so much I love from that, because I really like your point around needing both the top-down strategic piece, but then the detail coming from the bottom. Because one of the things that I often see with leaders is that perhaps they have a preference for one, and they almost a temptation to lean so heavily on that, and as a result not do the other. And I think you do need that bit of both, because like in a previous episode to this one, episode 130, when I interviewed Dawn Marriott, who was CEO over at Assets during a massive period of transformation, a huge business there with like over 100 sites and all this kind of stuff. And you can imagine at that kind of level with all that down below, you might assume that it's like, oh, just go strategic, just set the vision, great team, empower people. And that's a big part of that story. But actually, you do have to be willing to go into the detail and say, but what does that actually look like? And I love that example that you gave of both on the employee side, but particularly on the client side, of saying, actually, where are the biggest bottlenecks? Who are the clients that are causing the biggest pain? That are, we're basically, my team is saying, oh, there's no way we can get all these tax returns done because ABC company won't be done. How can we either flip them or, let them find happiness elsewhere? And I think that is so powerful as coming from a strategic view of, this is what we want. This is the vision. This is the values. This is what I want for the team. And therefore I'm willing to make hard decisions around letting people and clients go that don't align to that. And then having to understand the details, go, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And we're going to start with the bottleneck, start with where the biggest problem is. Because it's interesting, you said, oh, some people start with the quick wins and actually I went a different way. It's interesting because how you think about quick wins could be different there. Like if you look at quick wins as being just stuff that you can do quickly, then it's like, yeah, I'd agree that actually what's far more effective is start with the higher impact things, or as I might call it, like the bottlenecks. What's actually going to kill the plan before you start? Like those clients that are going to drag their feet. And so I think that's really powerful. Diving more into that detail, because for those businesses who have got these sort of deadline mechanics in their businesses, whether it's an event, whether it's tax return deadline, whether it's whatever, there'll be various things where they're like, oh, but we just can't. It's always going to be crunch in the month, 2 months, 3 months beforehand. And that's just the nature of the business. We've said, set out how you want the business to feel, what you want for the team, and so on. So we've got looking at the bottleneck, looking at your clients that are going to cause a problem. What else happened? Were there any other particular things that made the difference for your teams in terms of bringing that work earlier so that it didn't all become a big bottleneck?
Yeah, and I'd probably start with me in terms of that, because I was like so many other business owners out there, and those 3 questions I mentioned before, I did have a look at things. I was like, I didn't work weekends, but I was like, am I personally happy with how many meal times and bedtimes and time generally I'm spending with loved ones? Am I happy and enjoying the journey both inside the business and outside the business, and proud of where the business is compared with where I first wanted to be when I was working in my dad's forklift truck business? And also took a step back and say, flipping it, if I passed away tomorrow, would I be happy with the life I've left behind and the life I've lived? And all 3 of those questions was a no. And the fact I'd seen somebody else lose their dad in terms of it, I was like, this wasn't what I originally set up. This wasn't why I originally set up. This wasn't the impact I was looking to make. And I was like, I feel like we've lost our way, or we've lost our why. And it was those bits there where I was like, look, and I was like, I really want to take the kids to Florida. I did take the kids to Florida. I took them to Florida this year, but I wasn't getting any closer to that. Margins were deteriorating. We're working harder for less. And I was just supporting everybody in the wrong sort of way. And I forgot to put my oxygen mask on first. And it was like, what it is? And again, I'm just going to call this out. What you see and read on social media and the reality of things are often very, very different things. And I was just like, no, we need to do better. We need to do differently. We need to get control back. And it really resonated to bring that why back to us. And that why I kind of speak very clearly of now in terms of our 360 vision. And I speak of it in this order, and I'm very, very clear as to why I speak in this order. Our number 1 priority is make our lives better. And I'll come back to each of these individually in a second. Our number 2 priority is to make our clients' lives better. Our number 3 priority is to make the world a better place. Now, if I start with number 1, people say, why don't you start with your clients? Well, if we are not of good health and good happiness, how can we possibly be the best fit for our clients to support them in getting where they need to be? We're simply not going to be functioning fully. We might be able to remain professional, but they're only going to get maybe 60, 65% out of us. That's not the best place to be. We need to make sure that we know what boxes need ticking personally and in business to allow us to function. Once those are ticked, we can then support clients on their mission, but let's not fake it. Let's be real about it. When we do the same with clients, understand where they are, where they want to get to, help them answer the 3 questions I said there before, we can really make a fundamental difference. We can make the difference which I set out to achieve when I thought I want to do what my dad does. And I can do it without it being to the detriment of my family, friends, and everybody else I interact with. And the third bit, and you can only do it with those other 2 bits in place, we can only make the world a better place as a result of first functioning with those first 2. If we can't be happy and healthy and help clients do the same, It's all good and well to be charitable, but if we cannot put food on the table for families, we cannot be doing that because, again, you've got your priorities wrong. Those bits there give us our 360 vision, which we spoke of on our 10th birthday back in 2022. We shared with absolutely everybody then, and forms the framework for everything we do here and now, internally, externally, every single day.
Yeah, I really like that clarity of how looking after the team allows you to look after your clients better, which allows you to make the world a better place, and how that kind of stacks. And as a result, making sure that your team are really clear on that, so that they don't see the whole exercise as, oh, so it's just so that, you know, Graeme can go on ski holiday at the end of January. Instead, they see how, like, no, actually, this is an ethos change. This is how we work change, so that we can be better in all these different ways. To help me bring that to life in terms of the impact, perhaps was there as a result of making these changes, because it would be tempting for anyone listening going, okay, I can see how it benefits the team, that you balance out the work more, that you request documents from clients earlier, that you set their expectations earlier, that you flip those clients that previously would have been really late, or, you know, let them go if appropriate. I think it's obvious that, yeah, if you can balance out that work, it reduces the stress for the team.
Yeah.
Great. Give me an example of how, for a client, where you saw a positive outcome, whether it was as a result of an impact on stress or actually a business outcome, or maybe just a reaction, feedback that they gave.
Okay.
Give me an example of the impact on the client.
We've seen a client whereby they were doing all right and they'd had a bit of a boost over COVID, but they very much felt like it was going to be a bit of a temporary boost.
Yeah.
We said, right, like, okay, let's define what success looks like to you in terms of this, but we'll define success by way of business, by way of personal. So let's put some figures behind this. What's the sort of life you want to lead? And what sort of finances do you need around that? And what will those finances enable you to do? Now, for them, it was very clear what they want to do. They want to go to Lapland. They had a young daughter. So they want to go to Lapland whilst they still believed. Of course, Santa's real. Yeah, of course. But whilst still believe they want to go to Lapland in terms of that. But also in addition to that, they wanted to get a holiday home and want to maintain their standard cost of living. So we built all that out personally. We also had a look at all this because, again, there's compliance bits around this in terms of saving tax to give them that anticipation and transparency with regards to where the tax liability was going to need to be and where the business needed to be to support all of this. We replicate this process with them and with two of their clients. 3 clients the same year went to Lapland. The year before they did not think it possible. So straight away there, a very simple example.
Yeah, and to be clear, that was possible because you were able to have those discussions way earlier, where previously you'd have been having them 6 months plus later.
What we did is, and this goes back to some of the smaller steps we took, when we brought all the deadlines forward for tax returns, we didn't stop there. We brought all the deadlines forward for absolutely everything. Nice. So now when it comes to filing accounts, we're on one next stage of this. So the first stage we did was we never really want to be filing accounts any later than 6 months post-end, but ideally the goal was 3 months. By way of doing that, it allowed us to chat about things sooner. We also changed when we're having monthly catch-ups with people. We've got real-time information via Xero and things like that. We flipped that around to say, right, okay, we want to be getting ahead of things in those conversations. So we now work on the basis of rolling 12-month periods. We almost forget about the filing deadline apart from the filing of the accounts and say, right, what's the rolling 12 months telling us? So forget your year ends December. What's the rolling 12 months end at 31st of August? Tell us about your business. Nice. What actions do we need to take to get you back on task? Which then filters back to the personal goals of getting you to Lapland. What do we need to do? Because that's the most important thing. So we brought rolling timescales into play rather than fixed. What we're now doing is we're starting to kind of bring the filing deadline forward to 3 months prior to year end. So rather than kind of think 3 months post, we are having a provisional sign-off meeting 3 months before the year end's even finalised.
Nice.
So then that brings out not just the operational personal element of things, but it brings out 3 things. It brings out the financial side of things to say, where are you and where you're likely to be by your financial year end? Where might you be? So you've got 3 months thinking time, 12 months into your next financial year. So always plan ahead. Because again, people often think, well, okay, I need profits to be here, but what impact does that have personally? What impact does that have tax, etc., etc.? We make sure cash flow wise, you and I are both big fans of profit first. Cash flow wise, have you got money in your pots to kind of fit all these bits? And then personally, what role do each of us need to sit in to help you achieve that? So all of a sudden, we've went from close to filing deadline to 3 to 6 months post year end to a rolling timescale to put us in a position whereby we ask business owners better questions and help them subsequently find better answers, to then actually bring just the conversation, the filing deadline, to pre-year end, to have absolutely unbelievable conversations with all of our clients on a business and personal level. And it's the difference, like I say, we're talking about holidays to Florida, Lapland. We're talking about people no longer working a Friday afternoon or a Friday at all. We're talking about people understanding those clients they love dealing with and understanding why they love dealing with them, and work with more of those clients they absolutely love with. Two, we've got 4 clients that are going to probably exit their business within a 2-month period at this present time, and they are looking at exiting their business for what they want, when they want, how they want. And this is the bit where, bringing all this together a little bit, me personally, the role of an accountant isn't just producing accounts and set of tax returns. That ain't ever going to change the world. If you get to the stage as a business owner and you cannot retire what you want, with what you want, when you want, and how you want, all those bits there, and you've never been asked the right question by your accountant, that's a failed relationship, in my opinion. We're bringing all that together to consider wealth from a business and a personal perspective and help them enjoy the journey along the way. There's a very structured process, but it starts with moving the time scales and asking better questions.
I love that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, from that, I want to lead on to some quickfire questions, if I may, Graeme, which I know that in general, frankly, we both would struggle with, but I get to ask them, so I don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to give you some quickfire questions, 1 sentence maximum as an answer. And I have to do my best not to ask follow-up questions because I'm very tempted to do that. So the first quickfire question for you is, what one thing causes most stress for you?
Noise with regards to what's happening around me and retaining the focus because I'm an excitable person.
Are great leaders born that way or made?
Bit of both, insofar as there are elements which are born, but that doesn't mean you cannot change for the better.
And what's your preference? Taking the time to make the right decision or making a decision, then taking the time to make it right?
Taking the time to make the right decision.
What book or podcast has been most pivotal for you in changing your life for the better?
Well, of course, this podcast, Alexis, I mean, clearly, in terms of that, I'm going to go for a book in terms of this, and I'm going to say a Greg McKeown book, Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less.
Nice. And what's one thing that you would want business leaders to take from this episode in particular?
Find your why, maintain your why, and work around your why to make a better life for you and everybody you interact with.
Love it. Fantastic. I'll include links in the show notes to both Graeme's LinkedIn profile and also to his business, Tennick Accountants, which particularly if you're interested in going to Lapland, then he's talked at length about how successfully he's done that with many other clients. But I can heavily recommend him and his accountancy business based on the fantastic feedback I've seen and the award-winning results that he's got. So yeah, highly recommended. Go check out those. Graeme, any other resources or links that we should highlight?
Yeah, there's a number of resources on our website, so please feel free, anybody go to www.tennick.co.uk. They are for auto access, and we have multiple YouTube videos where you can access resources, because I'm very passionate about helping other business owners, including accountants, live and lead better lives. So please feel free to go and access those.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And from my side, one resource that I'd like to offer is that, as Graeme knows, because he's been part of this, I'm currently working with a group of accountancy owners, including Graeme, to review a playbook that we've developed of best practice SOPs. In this case, specifically for accounting and bookkeeping businesses. In future, we're going to have specific playbooks for other industries too, with the aim of creating these best practices to reduce the stress in the business, make it possible to grow and make it possible to not have to depend on any one individual in the business, including yourself as the owner. So if you're listening to this episode and you happen to own or lead a accountancy or bookkeeping practice, please do email me, alexis.kingsbury@airmanual.co, to get involved. And I'll review a part of the playbook with you on a call. We'll pick a process that you're particularly interested in, perhaps a challenging area for you. You'll get a ton of useful insight into best practices in that area, but also I'll get your feedback on how to make it even better and make sure that it's super relevant. And it's got loads of great guidance on how to customize it to your practice and so on. So please do that. But otherwise, thanks again, Graeme, for joining me. I've really appreciated your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. And everyone else, until next time, have fun.
Thanks, everybody.